LOLCOWs. What are they? Who are they? Where do they come from? All this and more coming up. A LOLCOW is defined as someone who is milked for laughs because they make a fool of themselves by saying and or doing foolish things. Some of you may have heard of some of the more famous LOLCOWs, such as Chris Chan, also known as Christine Chandler. There's also my personal favorite, LOLCOW, Kingcobrajfs. Allow me to use these two as examples for the overall point I'd like to make regarding this video. Alright, now stay with me now. Chris Chan is probably the most well-known LOLCOW.
I want everything about my house off the internet! I'll send in detectives, I'll send in police, I'll send in everything in my power!
Whether or not people know all of the Chris Chan lore, there is a pretty good chance if you were to ask a friend, they have probably heard of Chris Chan at the very least, or even her Sonichu comic that she created. For those of us not familiar with the most recent and insane entry in the Chris Chan lore, allow me to get you up to speed with an abridged summary of the key events that have happened in the last few years. Before I continue, I would like to stress that I am in no way arguing or defending the actions of Chris Chan. August 2021, Chris Chan is arrested for 1 count of incest with additional charges pending. Now, I know this is a crazy place to start with the Chris Chan lore, but stick with me please. So, 2021, Chris Chan is arrested, and something I have yet to mention is that Chris Chan is transgender. Born biologically male, she would come out as a transgender woman in 2014. Now, the reason I feel this is even necessary to mention is because the courts would recognize Christine's status as a transgender woman, but would ultimately place her in a male prison. Additionally, the charge of incest she was arrested for was for sexually abusing her own mother. Today, Chris Chan is a free woman and was let out of prison in March of 2023. The 2 articles I read while doing some research for the segment does not really go into why Christine was released on court order from custody, although some speculate that the charges could have been dropped just to save everyone the inconvenience of having to go to trial for this absolutely insane case. Now, I say all of this to express how I don't really think it's okay how some people treat these LOLCOWs. Now, again, I am in no way defending the actions of Chris Chan. I understand when putting yourself out onto the internet and documenting way too much of your life, it really can open you up to an avenue of criticism from people you do not know. And what I am getting at is that LOLCOWs are not all created equal. And not all of them deserve the constant barrage of trolling and harassment that they often get. If Chris Chan is my example of someone who gets criticism they may very well deserve, then my best example of a LOLCOW that gets too much hate and harassment that they don't deserve is Kingcobrajfs. Kingcobrajfs, or Joshua Faye Saunders, is my personal favorite LOLCOW. So much so that while I do recognize he tends to do things that would fit well within the definition of a LOLCOW.
God damn it! Sorry about that, YouTube.
I just consider him to be one of my favorite YouTubers. The guy is genuinely funny, even without all the trolling that people do to get him worked up. And, not everyone may share my enthusiasm about Josh. However, there is a hardcore, dedicated group of trolls that take it upon themselves to harass Josh at any opportunity they get. Cobes rules the trolls' lives and lives in their heads rent-free. This is something that Josh himself expresses, and he isn't really wrong. People that feel it necessary to mess and poke at Josh do so with malicious intent. And now, listen, I know I've said people mess with him a lot, and you might even be wondering how exactly they do that, since you can just get offline and avoid the trolls altogether, right? Wrong. Josh's most recent address was not exactly a secret amongst many of the trolls, and a favorite harassment technique among many of the trolls was to order food to Josh's apartment, and they would even leave a note in the DoorDash app itself for the dashers to continue to knock, regardless of however many notes that were taped to Josh's front door explicitly stating to not knock. Now, this may seem like a pretty harmless prank overall, just, to pull on someone, and, to a point, I might agree with you. But people will send him all sauce Subway sandwiches, in which it's essentially exactly what it sounds like, a sandwich with no protein and every variety of sauce that the store has on one bun. The one time someone did do this, Josh still ate it in an attempt to stick it to the trolls, and while it is a little funny, I will admit, it still feels mean-spirited.
Veggie Deluxe sub. That's hilarious. Like, I want to make fun of Cobra because he doesn't eat enough vegetables in his life. Durr. Fucking stupid, dude. Red wine vinegar, yellow mustard, honey mustard sauce, creamy sriracha, buffalo sauce, sweet onion teriyaki, pepperoni ranch sauce, Baja chipotle sauce. What the fuck is this? It's a random ass vegetable sub, dude. I don't even know what the fuck's on it, man. The trolls are sitting here like, oh, Cobra, we know where you live. Oh, we're gonna send you food to fuck with you. And it's like, how would you feel if it was reversed? You'd be like, how is this trolling? People are sending me free food. And on top of that, it's just like, that just proves I live rent free in my trolls' heads.
Additionally, folks have arranged for men from a certain section of Craigslist to meet up at Josh's, which, to his credit, he usually handles these interactions with some grace. And they'll do the same with Grindr as well. This is both upsetting for Josh and the poor homosexual men that thought they were about to meet up with some handsome hunk, but only to be met with Josh. Now, if these were the only things happening, I might not be making this video, but of course it doesn't really stop there. Now, trolls and some fans alike have enabled Josh's vices of drinking, often in excess, which I can already see someone who has never experienced addiction or someone that they care about with an addictive personality commenting, well, no one's forcing him to drink it. And yes, ultimately the statement is technically true. No one is holding his mouth open and pouring alcohol down his gullet, but sending someone the very substance that they publicly talk about having a problem with is morally so very wrong. Cobes has had a mostly negative experience with his alcohol abuse, as he frequently states he needs to slow down on his drinking so much, but he doesn't wish to stop altogether. Of course, this isn't a particularly effective method of working on one's relationship with alcohol, and there are several recorded instances where Josh has frequently ended up drinking a large quantity of alcohol that was either sent to him or bought with donation money, where he will get hammered on stream. It's a vicious cycle, and I think ultimately people need to stop sending him booze and stop enabling this behavior. Josh has also admitted to abusing Air Duster, which is dangerous, and trolls have repeatedly sent Cobes a 6-pack of compressed Air Duster, knowing he is likely to abuse it. And I just want to add another disclaimer here. I seriously would like to discourage the abuse of Air Duster or any whippet or inhalant-like substances. These are dumb, and they will just kill brain cells, and the chance of instant death when abusing them is not zero. Please be smart, people. And again, I don't mean to make it sound like Josh has no agency for himself. Of course he does. However, something that is worth mentioning, in case anyone here isn't familiar with Josh has autism, which is a neurological and developmental disorder. Now, he isn't shy about sharing this information, but for folks that aren't aware, autism can manifest in people very differently. It's a spectrum with no two people being quite exactly alike. But there are a few commonalities in adults with autism that I'd like to share with you all to sort of help us all understand why Josh may be taking part in these destructive behaviors. Autistic adults may be 9 times more likely to take part in substance use to self-medicate or self-regulate than non-autistic adults, according to the study published in 2021. A 2020 paper reporting that potentially 36% of autistic adults may develop some form of substance abuse issue, although it is worth noting that this particular report did take a look at over 26 different studies done on the link of autistic adults and substance use disorder to conclude this 36% figure. Ultimately, due to how different these different methods of data collection were with the studies, they could not come up with an exact measure, and thus the rate of substance abuse determined by this report was anywhere from 1.3% to 36% of autistic adults with co-occurring substance abuse issues. And finally, another report, not providing a numerical value for the likelihood or rate of substance abuse, instead just stating the evidence from 26 studies studied that does reflect that adults with autism are likely a greater risk for developing a substance use disorder. Look, the point I'm trying to get out with all this information is that there very well may be a link with adults with autism using and abusing substances as a coping mechanism or otherwise. How might this relate to Josh? Well, Josh has expressed on several occasions drinking makes him feel like it helps with his autism. And I am no mental or healthcare professional, but from personal experience and testimonies from other neurodivergent adults, this is a common feeling among some folks. There is almost a feeling normal after a drink or two, where you don't feel the same social tension that neurodivergent people often report feeling when attempting to communicate with neurotypical adults. There is also a well-known behavior among adults with autism where they will often overeat and feel the need to consume large quantities of food or drink, which may explain some of Josh's ridiculous food hacks. In other words, there's a link with adults with autism and some form of eating disorder. Again, the point I'm trying to get across here with all this information is that when you learn all these details about Josh, it paints a much bigger picture of how one might end up in Josh's position, especially when factoring the fact that trolls have gone out of their way to call up any place of business that Cobes has expressed interest in and harassing the establishment until left with no other choice but to ban Cobes altogether just to get the trolls to stop calling. Imagine not being able to socialize at all with any of your friends in public or even in their own home in some cases, since trolls have found the phone number of a friend of Cobes and spam called the poor folks while he was streaming. Kingcobrajfs is not a particularly problematic person, at least not in the same sense as other LOLCOWs, such as Chris Chan, Daniel Larson, and, Cyrax. Each of these individuals are all autistic or have some form of neurological or cognitive disorder, and each of these three are heavily criticized for their actions on and offline. Cobes is not the same as any of these people, and yet many of the commentary channels I've stumbled across while watching content about Josh treat him exactly the same as they would one of these predators. I understand and agree that Josh is not an infallible human being. He is not without his flaws. Josh may have moments of delusion where he lets his ego get a little too inflated, or people may not appreciate the fact that he does not have a job and is on SSI, all while accepting online donations for shoutouts or occasionally selling one of his Kingcobrajfs wands, which, side note, I kind of want one, so bad. Another side note about Cobra being on SSI, if this is something that actually bothers you about him, I would recommend looking inward and doing some self-reflection. Josh definitely qualifies for the Social Security, and while he might physically be able to perform certain work tasks, I just don't see how he could hold down a job that pays him well enough to not be on SSI. Plus, for those of you that don't know, SSI typically does not pay you very much at all. I cannot imagine that he makes much more money than whatever his monthly rent is, leaving him with very little money if he isn't bringing in donations from his streams. In short, I think this treatment of LOLCOWs, like Cobra, is downright mean-spirited and malicious. And they receive a cruel and unusual amount of harassment, especially when compared to other LOLCOWs that are actually deserving of some of this negative attention. Just to clarify, I do not endorse or encourage anyone to go and harass any of the people that have been mentioned here. Additionally, I have made a choice to not name any of the commentary channels that I personally have an issue with, as, well, they are all much bigger channels than myself. This video was made just to express my personal opinion about the treatment of Kingcobrajfs, and I would personally love to see less harassing of this poor guy. Who knows, if he didn't have all these trolls punching down on him, we may even see a small percentage of the old Cobra where he's out and about hitting the town and not confined to his smelly little apartment all the time.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy.
If you happen to disagree with any of these points made in this video, feel free to leave a comment. If you liked what I had to say, please consider liking and subscribing. It would mean a lot. I have been wanting to branch out with different forms of content lately, and I would love to continue to make content that both you and I enjoy. Thanks for watching.